The Underground Railroad is Harriet Tubman's legacy because she freed over 1,000 slaves through the Underground Railroad. Armand Ross, known as Harriet Tubman, was an African-American slave born in the early 1820s. No one really knows exactly when. She is well known for her work as a Union spy during the American Civil War. She helped free slaves through the safe houses and anti-slavery activists known as the Underground Railroad. Harriet was bought out at the age of 6 by a man named Edward Broadus. She was lent to a couple that beat her frequently. At age 12, she was seriously injured by a blow to the head by a white overseer for refusing to tie up a man who attempted to escape, causing Harriet to have visions about freedom, supposedly sent from God, otherwise known as seizures. Harriet Ross, soon to be Harriet Tubman, married a free man named John Tubman. John did not have the same dream as her of moving out north, but she knew if she wanted to be free, she had to go north. So she told him that she would go by herself. Before he knew it, she was out the door, and John said he would tell her master. So Harriet came back, but 5 years later, she snuck out and left for Philadelphia. Harriet was given a piece of paper by a white abolitionist that told her 2 names. It showed her where to go to get to the first house. At the first house, she was put in a wagon and covered by a sack. She then got a ride with a woman and her husband passing by, who took her to Philadelphia. Here, Harriet got a job to save money and help free slaves. She also met William Still, which is one of the busiest Underground Railroad masters. In 1850, Harriet helped the first slaves escape to the north and later was made an official conductor of the Underground Railroad. This meant that she knew all the routes and free territory, and she had to take an oath of silence so the Underground Railroad would be kept a secret. Anytime someone would want to go back, Harriet would pull out a gun and say, "You'll be free or die a slave." Harriet thought if anyone turned back, either one of them would get caught or killed. Abolitionism is an act to end slavery in both Western Europe and America. The Underground Railroad was a series of safe houses and anti-slavery activists. Some activists had quilts on their front porch or fence that helped slaves and told them where to go next, such as, if the center of the quilt was red, it would mean fire is burning and you may come in. If the center of the quilt was black, that meant fire is not burning and they should not come in. The symbols are all different colors except for the center picture. It is either red or black. Red means fire is burning in the house and it's safe to come in. Black means that fire is out and the house is not safe and to keep moving. The slaves would use many codes and words in the Underground Railroad, and these are just some of them. The distance from Maryland to Canada is 1,794 miles. The states around Maryland are not free states, and Harriet had to lead slaves through the woods and houses of 12 different states. Along the way, not everyone could be trusted. The reason they wanted to be Canada was it was the next closest free state near Philadelphia. The Fugitive Slave Law required all citizens to return slaves upon capture to their masters, and all must cooperate in this act. The Fugitive Slave Law was passed September 13, 1850, the year after Harriet ran away and freed many slaves. This act was taking place all around in stations of slaveholding in southern states to northern states and Canada. This affected the Underground Railroad because it caused many activists in the Underground Railroad to send slaves back to their masters. If not done so, the activists would be in jail for 6 years. Harriet admired many people who worked in the Underground Railroad. John Brown, Frederick Douglass, Laura Smith Haviland, Levi Coffin, and Thomas Garrett. Harriet worked with Frederick. They both were slaves that escaped. Laura Smith was an abolitionist during the times of the Underground Railroad. She established the first ever Underground Railroad station in Michigan. Levi Coffin was an American Quaker and was deeply involved with the Underground Railroad in Indiana and Ohio. He moved to Indiana and soon realized his house was on the line of stops of the Underground Railroad, so he decided to take part in bringing in slaves inside to taking care of them. Thomas Garrett was an American abolitionist, a leader of the Underground Railroad movement before the American Civil War. During the Civil War, at the request of the federal government, Harriet Tubman served with the U.S. Army in South Carolina as a scout, spy, nurse, and soldier. Under the command of Colonel James Montgomery, she led the Combahee River expedition with the African-American 2nd South Carolina Force, designed to disrupt Southern supply lines and free hundreds of slaves. The Union Army was a land force that fought for the North during the Civil War. Harriet Tubman was a Union spy, cook, nurse, and scout. Harriet worked through the Underground Railroad with the slaves during the Civil War. The Union Army consisted of 16,000 men and 403 nurses on active duty. On June 1, 1863, 3 gunboats started off on the Combahee River expedition in South Carolina to begin the dangerous mission. Relying on information Harriet and other scouts received from their sources about Confederate positions, when they reached the shore, they destroyed a Confederate supply depot and freed more than 750 slaves. James Montgomery was born on December 22nd in 1814 in Ashtabula County, Ohio. In the summer of 1861, Montgomery joined a force of Kansas Union volunteers and was appointed colonel. In early 1863, he was approved to raise a force of black soldiers from among the thousands of former slaves who were escaping to the protection of the Union Army lines. Tubman volunteered for the Union as a cook and a nurse before she was recruited by Union officers to establish a network of spies in South Carolina made up of former slaves. Tubman became the first woman in the country's history to lead a military expedition. She helped Colonel James Montgomery plan a night to raid and free slaves from rice plantations along the Combahee River. Harriet freed many slaves after the first 300. She went to almost 2,000 miles to get from Maryland to Canada, just for one reason: to be free. She freed her parents, her friends, her siblings, and tried to free her spouse, but he did not come. Harriet Tubman was a part of the Underground Railroad from the moment she escaped to the moment she died. She left in the year of 1849 for Philadelphia. In 1850, she returned to Maryland and brought slaves back to Philadelphia. That year, she was made an official conductor of the Underground Railroad. She also made separate trips south to save her family and friends to free them. Harriet Tubman was the first woman to lead an expedition that freed 750 slaves. She was a spy, volunteer cook, nurse, soldier, and scout. She led other scouts and slaves around the Confederate positions. Harriet was working under Colonel James Montgomery. She mostly led the expedition while he led the Civil War and worked with his own force. Harriet died in Auburn, New York on March 10, 1913. Tubman was buried with the military rites in Fort Hill Cemetery, a short drive from her home. In the years following her death, she was awarded many honors, plaques, memorials, and even a postage stamp bearing her name and picture. If the overseer didn't throw the heavy metal weight, and if it didn't hit her head, over 1,000 slaves wouldn't be free. She wouldn't have visions from God of being free. She wouldn't have had been the first lady to lead an expedition. She wouldn't have had help slaves. She would just be Harriet Tubman, and no one would know anything about her. If you think about it, Harriet's masters did help her. Well, you might think, well, they beat her and whipped her. Yes, they did, but at the same time, that made her stronger and more free-willed. Harriet's cohorts also helped a lot. They gave her maps and guidance to help her find her way. Her legacy was all the slaves she freed and how she did it. She left in the year of 1849 to Philadelphia and got maps and guidance from other cohorts with the route and people's houses to stay at. She returned in 1850 to get other slaves, including her brothers that returned. She went to Maryland over the course of the year, and at the end, she freed over 300 slaves. She then went on an expedition in 1863 in June on the Combahee River and freed over 750 slaves. That adds up to over 1,000 slaves freed in the course of her lifetime.